Hey everyone, and welcome to my first ever actual review of a product on this channel. Now, I picked the Note 10 Plus for the reason that I've used it as my daily driver for over a year now. So, it's a product that I know one of the best, so I feel I can give you in-depth details about its pros, cons, and all of its caveats. So what I'll be basing this review off from is something that I call the 6 A's of what makes an amazing smartphone in 2020. This list is based off from number 1 being the most important and number 6 being the least important, but of course still very crucial. So the 6 A's are 1. Amazing battery life. This being number 1 because without it a phone cannot even power up the display, run the CPU, etc. and you'll just have a pretty slab of glass in your hands. 2. Amazing software. Poor software, such as poor operating system plagued with bugs, glitches, and app crashes, would lead you into not using it at all, even if it can be powered up. 3. Amazing performance. Even with good operating system, you can't utilize it if it is bottlenecked by poor hardware and lags everything or shuts down application due to poor CPU or RAM management. 4. Amazing camera. Being 2020, cameras on phones have never been more important, with social media applications such as Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, and of course the platform in which you are viewing this on, YouTube. 5. Amazing display. Bad displays such as peak brightness will render your screen unusable in direct sunlight, or if the lowest brightness is still too bright, this will lead you to straining your eyes viewing your phone in the dark before bedtime. 6. Amazing build quality. Least important because if everything else above is nailed, but every major component is put within a plastic build instead of glass or metal, it doesn't render the phone useless, unlike some of the other key points above. Without further ado, let's kick it off with the battery life on the Note 10 Plus. The Note 10 Plus has a 4300 mAh battery. So far with everyday usage, battery life on this phone has been average at best. Even without the battery degradation from using it for the past year, I remember using the phone straight out of the box. I averaged at best 5 hours of screen on time. With this being my first phone which exceeded 4000 mAh, I had expected much better endurance from the battery, but was quite disappointed with the results. I believe this is due to the fact that it pushes 498 ppi on a 6.8 inch screen, which can be quite taxing on the battery. Now, you might think that I've placed this phone at its highest screen resolution at Quad HD, but I've only ever run this phone at 1080p, due to the fact that the difference from Full HD to Quad HD is not worth it on a screen at this size, and I find that 1080p is still plenty sharp for my viewing experience. It's not all bad. Within the box they actually give you a 25 watt charger, which in my real world usage, from the lowest of 6% charging up to full in 1 hour and 10 minutes, there's also a 45 watt charger you can buy separately from Samsung. The score I'm gonna give for the battery performance is 7 out of 10. The last Samsung I have ever owned was the Galaxy S2, which of course has been almost 10 years ago, with it being released back in April 2011, and I had a really bad experience with the phone, hence why I went for almost 10 years without going back to Samsung. Since then, Samsung has gone through many changes and iterations of its software. I would say the One UI 2.0 experience is a lot better than what it was back then, and has come a long way with its refinements. But is it enough? One UI 2.0 on top of Android 10, the experience has been meh? Nothing to write home about, but at the same time was not the mess that it was back then. I like that it houses some obvious options at the bottom, which helps people even with big hands not having to reach all the way to the top on such a big phone, but that's about all the positives that I can even say. Samsung's skin on top of Android has left me instantly installing Nova Launcher as the default launcher. There is no guarantee about future software updates with Samsung, and even if there are, the update comes out many months later after the new Android gets released by Google. Another gripe of mine is why does it have multiple copies of the same apps such as Clock, Galleries, and a flurry of Samsung bloatware. Also, the worst thing about it is you can't even uninstall them. This phone has way too many features in which the average user would never even know how to use, or even a power user like me forgets due to the obscene amount of features that it has. I'm going to give the software a 6 out of 10. Also, why is there like 7 different ways of taking a screenshot. Choices like this makes me think that it would impact the performance, which is now a nice segue to talk about performance. The version I have here is the non-5G variant, which runs on the Exynos 9825, based on a 7nm architecture with something called Mali G76 for its graphics card, backed up with 12GB of RAM and 256GB of UFS 3.0 storage. So the reason as to why I didn't pick the 5G variant of this phone is due to the fact that the 5G just isn't viable or ready for the masses yet, and in 2020 it still isn't ready. If you take a look at this picture here, you'll see the coverage is nowhere near ready compared to 4G's coverage. 12GB of RAM is nice, but is a bit of an overkill, though I did manage to use 10 out of the 12 once upon a time. As for storage option, I believe this was the base and there was no 128GB variant, and I've got to say having the 256GB of UFS 3 has been such a nice luxury, as I downloaded a lot of programs and I never have to worry about filling up the storage on the Note 10 Plus. I haven't noticed any stutter, lags or apps closing down even whilst gaming, though I don't play any graphically intense games on my phone, so your usage may vary in this regard. The only complaint I have about the performance of this phone would be of course the Exynos 9825 when compared to the Snapdragon variant, as it is an inferior chipset by about 5 to 10% in some tests. The rating I'm going to give for the performance is 8.5 out of 10. When shooting with the camera array during the day, it will produce some really good stills. I believe that in most scenarios that the image you capture will come out with accurate colors instead of oversaturation, in which we know Samsung was famous for doing so in the past. This was Samsung's first attempt at bringing a triple camera setup on the Note series, with the introduction of an ultra wide lens, and I do like how it handled distortion, which can be a challenge with a 123-degree field of view. Telephoto camera here is well balanced and you can get some decent results with even up to 5x digital zoom, but it's nothing special. The primary sensor, in which most people will be using to take their shots, has a dual aperture going from f1.5 to f2.4. This feature was first introduced back with the Galaxy S9, and I think most people have forgotten about this already. But out of all the three lenses, it is definitely the most capable one for all types of scenario. Samsung's night mode can be a bit over the top in some cases, but it is really reliable in pulling a lot of light from some very dark scenarios. The night mode even extends to the selfie shooter, and speaking about the selfie camera, if there is one camera that knows how to do selfie portraits, it's definitely Samsung. If there is anyone considering a vlogging phone, the Note 10 Plus would be my second pick. It does a solid effort when it comes to stabilization. It's got the least amount of warping as you walk, which Android phones are notorious for, and you can switch to any of the other lenses as you record. That includes the selfie camera, and the cherry on top of that is that it can all be done at 4K 60 frames per second. That's right, all 4 cameras. There are phones in 2020 that still can't achieve this feat. I would like to give the Note 10 Plus a 9 out of 10 when it comes to the camera performance. The screen comes in at 6.8 inches, which from my knowledge was the biggest back in 2019. It has a 91% screen to body ratio with a very slim bezel at the top and bottom. Your eyes will get a treat with the screen reaching 1308 nits of brightness, dynamic AMOLED and HDR10 Plus display technology, and curved edges. So far I have a love-hate relationship with the curved edge, as there are times in which it picks up my palm touches and interferes with the touch input, but it truly is such an immersive experience. The aspect ratio is sitting at 19:9 and has a quad HD display with a 498 pixel density per inch. The glass you have protecting you from drops and scratches is Gorilla Glass 6. So far I haven't dropped my phone yet, but when it comes to the scratch protection I am quite disappointed, as when I had the screen unprotected and left it in my pocket, I was quite saddened by the scratch mark by whatever happens in the realm of pockets, and I was careful to not house my keys or anything else for that matter in the same pocket. There is a center punch hole which is astonishingly unintrusive, but if I were to place a punch hole anywhere, it would be the top left corner, as when you place your phone in landscape mode to watch content, it becomes lodged in the bottom left hand corner, and from my experience, there is nothing exciting going on down there. At the time of launch, Samsung made a decision to equip it with a 60Hz display. Now, personally, it didn't bother me as much as it bothered other tech reviewers, as I'm not a hardcore gamer, and that's where you'll truly see your investment return. This display is worthy of 9 out of 10. Samsung stuck with its glass and glass sandwich build, with both front and back glass being made from Gorilla Glass 6. The weight is evenly distributed, which makes it a bit easier to handle, and this phone feels incredibly thin with its curved sides. You'll find a very small camera hump in the back. It would have been nice to see it flush, but that's just me nitpicking, and I should be grateful considering how huge the hump is on its successor, the Note 20 Ultra. The stereo speakers on this phone is one of the loudest and clearest I've heard so far, and it's just really a nice extra to have. Typically, as with most other flagship phones, the Note 10 Plus is equipped with IP68 water and dust resistance, wireless charging and reverse wireless charging, and as a nice bonus there's also a micro SD slot for further expansion, if your 256 or 512GB wasn't enough for you already. Though the phone that used to be known to have it all is missing a headphone jack, which is strange because the S10 still carried it in the very same year. Build quality gets a 9.5 out of 10. So, is the Note 10 Plus still worth it in 2020? The overall score of the phone was 8.2, and that's quite high considering the age. I would most definitely still recommend this for the average user, but personally for me, I would not buy this phone in 2020 for the sole basis that it scored the lowest in the two most important categories for me. But your priorities and needs are different from mine. The versatility and quality of the camera still holds up for 2020, and the build quality, display and performance has not been hindered by age. You're probably thinking that it's only been a year and a bit, but in the tech world that's basically aged 50 years due to the advancements that goes into smartphones. I know I didn't cover all the camera feature as well as the S Pen, but this video is seriously way longer than it needs to be, and other tech reviewers has dedicated a whole separate video on said feature sets. Thank you for tuning into my very first review, especially if you stayed to the very end. This is Els Tech Space, and I'll catch you in the next one.